Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back. Week 2 in our 7 churches series through Revelation. If you missed week 1, I'm not going to reintroduce the woman sitting next to me, but Cece's still joining us. Hi, Cece.
Hello.
Yeah. So Revelation 2, we're going to be in verses 8 through 11 this week, talking about the letter to the church in Smyrna. Yeah. And so I think it might be helpful. We talked about this a little bit last week, but all of these 7 churches are in the modern region of Turkey.
Right.
And they actually, they follow like a geographic pattern, almost like a clockwise pattern.
Right.
So we talked about Ephesus last week. Now we're in Smyrna, and here's the Mediterranean, and there's the Aegean Sea that kind of pops right back up into Greece, and there's Italy, but we've got Ephesus and now Smyrna, and this is just gonna there's like roads,
Right.
postal roads even,
Right.
that are just kind of going around in a clockwise fashion. So we're in Smyrna. Cece, once again, help us understand so Smyrna still is in existence
It's
today.
the only church in
Yeah.
existence today. So you could actually go there and visit.
Yeah.
Smyrna, that's such a weird name.
Yeah.
Okay. But they do say that myrrh, like the herb
Yeah.
that the Magi
Sure.
brought to
Sure.
Jesus. One
Sure.
of them was myrrh.
Yeah.
To burn the incense. And actually, they say it came from Smyrna.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. That's
Yeah.
kind of a fun fact, right?
Yeah.
Not super important, but fun. I like fun facts like that. But anyways, Smyrna was a wealthy city.
Yeah.
And not only that, from everything I read, it was a beautiful city.
Yes.
And I'm just attracted to, I can just imagine how beautiful this was. It was
Yeah.
a port city.
Yes.
So there were, what was important was commerce as well, like trade, imports, exports. But I'm just imagining this, wealthy city where you could make a lot of money,
Yeah.
but also where you had just
Yeah.
beauty surrounding you as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now we have to contrast this then,
Yeah.
because you're exactly right. But that was not the experience of the church in Smyrna, right?
Exactly. So again, this beautiful city, but the church was experiencing something different. Smyrna also called itself the crown of Asia.
Sure.
And it was on the Aegean Sea. We said that. The big thing about Smyrna is that it had strong allegiance and loyalty to Rome.
Yeah.
And so if you're thinking back like centuries beforehand, before the Romans took over all of this land, they were battling the Greeks to have rule. And Smyrna was one of the cities that said, you know what? I don't know what the outcome's going to be. I'm not sure who's going to win, but we're going to throw in our hat for the Roman Empire.
Yes.
And they
loyalty
were right.
to Rome from the very, very
beginning. That was their thing. Strong allegiance to Rome. The church at Smyrna, the difference is that they were suffering from persecution and they were very afraid. So imagine, beautiful city, church is persecuted and afraid. And this is why. A couple of things. So Domitian, that's the name of the emperor at this time, right? Domitian, he was the emperor of Rome. And the big thing with him is really that's where this whole allegiance to the emperor started. He decided that from here on out, you could worship other gods, which that was a thing at the time, right? The polytheism of the Greeks that had carried in through culture. You could do that, but your allegiance had to be to Caesar first and foremost. And if you didn't say like Hail Caesar and agree with that, you were going to be persecuted.
Domitian was the first to seem to like elevate loyalty to the emperor, to Caesar, up to the level of worship that was punishable by the state if you didn't do it.
Right.
So Domitian's got like some crazy stories too. Like he would imprison and kill family members. He would call them atheists.
Right. Crazy.
If they didn't bow to him. I mean, then we're talking like an uncle or a niece,
cousin,
I think, a cousin who grew up with him.
Right.
But they failed to recognize him as a god.
Can you imagine that, your family member?
And so he looks at them and calls them atheists.
Yes. And he kills his cousin.
It's crazy.
And imprisons the niece.
So if you're following Jesus in Smyrna and you're refusing to acknowledge the emperor as though he's a divine being, you're not only unpatriotic and disloyal to the emperor, you're going to forfeit your life.
Yep. Yes. And the Christian church had an example of this. So one of their leaders, Polycarp,
Yeah.
he's living this life and they're like telling him, "Hey, like all you have to do is say Hail Caesar."
Yep.
And his response was, "I've been following Jesus for like 80 years and I'm not going to do that."
So
Yeah.
Polycarp, what's one of the cool things about the New Testament is we now have lineage to some of the original writers. So John writes Revelation.
Mm-hmm.
We know from early church history,
Right.
Polycarp, this man who's a bishop in Smyrna,
Right.
an elderly guy who was in charge, provided leadership to the church in Smyrna, was a disciple. He was a contemporary of John.
Of John. Mm-hmm.
John lives a long time. Polycarp is a
Yep.
young man, then
Right.
following John. Polycarp lives a long time. And so Polycarp is an elder, both spiritually and literally,
Mm-hmm. Right.
who dies for his faith in Smyrna at the hands of the Roman Empire.
Can't even imagine
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, it really can't.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a nice kind of context to what's going on in Smyrna. Let's kind of dive into the text together and
Right.
let's kind of see what Jesus has to say. So let's go to, I think, verse 9. Let's go to verse 9 here quickly. I know your afflictions and your poverty. We talked a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yet you are rich. I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not. And here's a phrase, and we see this phrase a couple of different times. He calls these Jews a synagogue of Satan.
Yes.
That's pretty
Yeah. It's a little confusing and a little scary. And so
Yes.
when I read that, I was like, okay, like I need to understand it a little bit better. But here when you're reading the text, it's important again, set against the backdrop of persecution and
Yep.
fear, we're
Yep.
going to see Jesus encouraging his church. And that's what
Yes.
he's doing here. I mean, what great hope when you're reading the book of Revelation, when you start understanding that the original hearers actually felt hope because
Yeah.
they were waiting for
Yeah.
Jesus to tell them something good,
Right.
right? And this is a really great spot
Yeah.
for this. So when Jesus tells them, I know your affliction and your poverty, yet you are rich. So again, you're poor, but you're rich.
Yes.
That's a little confusing.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So what he meant was, well, first of all, why were they poor? Should we unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, let's do that. We
Okay.
have probably just a little bit of time.
Okay.
So give me 30 seconds.
Quickly. Okay. So there were trade guilds, basically unions. And if you didn't participate in the trade guild, which they would throw like a meal to honor a pagan god.
Yeah.
And as Christians, like they didn't want to do that. So if you didn't participate, then you couldn't actually, network and get business. So then you were poor.
It's not really all that dissimilar to a lot of the tensions that a lot of us feel in the workplace today.
Exactly.
You get ahead by
Yeah.
doing some of the
Yeah.
things that maybe violate our values.
Right.
Same thing was going on 2,000 years ago.
Exactly.
And so you would sacrifice advancement or access
Yeah.
or networking, like you said, because you wouldn't participate in some of the things they wanted you to participate in that they tied your economic livelihood
Exactly.
to.
So this next part's really important, okay, when it comes to like even the culture and what's going on.
Yes.
I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan.
Yep.
So again, the Jewish, they had we call it church, they would go to the synagogue,
Sure.
okay?
Yep.
And so we're going to focus here on internal persecution, and this is why. The Roman Empire viewed the Jewish people as a protected class.
Yep.
So what that means is they did not have to bow down to Caesar.
Did a special dispensation to continue to
Yes.
worship, but there were conditions attached to that.
Of course, but at least they didn't have
They
to.
didn't have to
it was fine.
violate that part of their
Yes.
faith.
And so at the time also, the Roman Empire viewed Christians as under that umbrella.
Sure.
And simply put,
Like Christians were a sect of Judaism,
Yeah, so-
according to from the Roman perspective.
right. And so if that was the truth, then Christians wouldn't have to bow down to Caesar.
Right.
But this was a problem. This is where the whole synagogue of Satan comes in,
Yeah.
right? The Jewish people, they were throwing the Christians under the bus.
Because it wasn't as though the Christians weren't just bowing down to Caesar. The
Yes.
Christians were worshiping Jesus as
Yes.
though he was God.
And the Jews did not. They were still waiting for the Messiah.
That's right.
They didn't recognize. That's the problem. They
Yes.
didn't recognize Jesus
So
as
what
the Messiah.
happens then, right, is
Yeah.
these Jews essentially are acting as Roman spies.
Exactly. Informants.
And they're ratting out these Christians and sacrificing them.
Yes. So
Yeah.
that is the deal there. That's
So
the deal with that.
that's verse
with that
9.
point.
Let's
Yep.
move to verse 10. Do not be afraid afraid of what you're about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution for 10 days.
Yes.
And we know that that revelation is symbolic. So sometimes we're going to know exactly what they mean. Sometimes we're not. 10 days. What we know about that is there's a period of time, starts and ends. That's what we mean, right?
Yes.
Be faithful even to the point of death, and I will give you your life as your victor's crown. What's interesting, I think, about this one from my perspective, CC, is that you're not going to be protected from suffering.
Right. No, you are. He's telling us you are going to walk through suffering, but the hope comes with, again, the 10 days, knowing that it is a finite amount of time.
Yes.
My mom always told me, Cece, when you have a trial, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's really that beginning, middle, and end. Think of 10 days. You had the 10 plagues. You had 10 days that Daniel suffered. He only ate fruits and vegetables, So 10 days, finite time. And really what Jesus is telling them after those 10 days, what I love is the promise that he gives them. It all ties together. Again, no coincidences. He tells them that the promise is if you're faithful unto death, okay, you're going to be persecuted, you'll be thrown in prison, you'll be poor, you'll have all these things, you might even die. He says to them, do not be afraid, do not be fearful. So that's the first thing. It's they've been faithful, but they are scared.
Yeah. In other words, don't worry about what's happening.
Yes.
Here's what's going to happen. It's going to be bad.
That's the hope.
But you don't have to have fear.
That's the hope. He's encouraging them and warning them, we're going to walk through these things, but it's going to be okay. And he tells them at the end, you're going to get the victor's crown, right? Like the Olympics. So it wasn't like the crown that a king wears at this point. It's athletic games were a big deal back then, right? And so it's a symbol. It's an image that these original hearers could hear and all of a sudden feel. Can you feel the emotion of being at the Olympics and seeing somebody crown the victor? They were probably thinking, in all of this persecution, tribulation, at some point, I'm going to be that person.
I've never run a marathon. I'm never going to run a marathon. I feel totally fine with that. Here's what I've heard. As you get through that marathon, you hit walls. They're just horrible. But at the end, it's an unbelievable accomplishment.
It's the crown of life. And even what I love about this is Jesus even ties it to the very beginning where he says who he is. And he says, what did he say, Jesse? He said something about being the first and the last who died and came to life again. And that's pointing to him being eternal and how us as believers,
shifting the perspective.
If we believe in that today, no matter what you're going to, if you hold on to that, who he is and who he is in you, you're good.
All right, we've kind of unpacked the historical context. We've talked a little bit about scripture. There's some challenging things. Wrestling. We're going to do some wrestling this weekend. Head into your groups, do some discussion. We'll see you back here in a little bit. Hey, I hope as you were discussing, I hope you were able to give yourself permission, and maybe other people in your group permission, to wrestle with some things, because there's some things, CC, like in this text that we don't think about most of our days, because most of our days are not lived under the threat of death for our faith.
Right.
Even though most of us will never face that decision, many of us have had to face some pretty costly decisions.
Absolutely.
When it comes to our loyalty, and are we going to count the cost of being loyal to Jesus in a worldly way? Sometimes this world punishes us in a lot of different ways for remaining loyal to Jesus. And so I hope you gave yourself permission there. He ends this letter to Smyrna in verse 11. Here's what it says. It says, whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. And here's the sentence. The one who is victorious will not be hurt at all by the second death. So here's a couple things, okay? Death in Scripture is a little bit more of a dense, complex thing. And But if we kind of boil it down to its essentials, death in Scripture really is separation.
Yes. Yep.
And so scripturally, there seems to be two types of separation, two types of deaths.
Yeah, you've got the physical death, which is what we as humans see.
Yes.
It's the real part of our bodies.
So your body is now separated from your spirit, from your soul.
Exactly. Your
right?
spirit. So you've got, I always tell people, you've got, you are made up of a body, a spirit, and a soul. So the physical death, the first death, is the body.
Yeah.
Now the second death is, like you said, it's also very simple. It's that second death not being affected by it means that if you believe in Jesus and you confess him and you make it to your last day, not being perfect, but following to the best of your abilities, following Jesus, right? At that point, you will not be separated from God. Your
so
soul
even though
and
your
spirit
is separated, and when we say spirit and soul, we're using those synonymously. So body separated from spirit at physical death. For those of us who trusted Jesus, and have followed him with our lives, our spirit then, even though it's separate from body, reunites with Jesus in heaven until one day the resurrection happens, and then our spirit is reunited with the resurrection body.
Absolutely.
We don't experience that second death. But what he's saying here is if you have rejected Jesus in this life and told God, I don't need you, I'm going to live my own way. Then not only will you experience that first death like all of us, you will experience the second death, meaning you're going to live in some way in eternity separated, your spirit separated from God. Yeah. And another wrestle that's tough for us, I think a lot of us to accept, that's something clearly Scripture teaches, and the hope here for those of us is to, again, remember anything that we experience this, and some of us will experience horrific things, painful things, will pale in comparison to the eternity of life that we will have together in Jesus. And that is a real hope in the future that we can grab onto today.
It's basically trying to take our mindset, Jesse. I always try to take my mindset, and what I see feels like reality. And I try to remind myself, but really the invisible is more real than what I see. So the invisible God, the invisible hope of eternity, of being with God. So even knowing that heaven has started today, right? And I want to live my way in a life in this life where I carry out this heaven, little glimpses of heaven in my actions, like when I don't yell at my kid, when I'm reasonable instead of unreasonable. Those are glimpsed for me. When I'm patient,
it's good.
Those are reasonable, visible parts of heaven. So that's all it is trying to get yourself in the mindset of like, okay, what's my visible reality, but what's my hope in Jesus, and never being separated from God.
Good word. We're going to let that be the last word for this week. Thanks for joining us again. We're excited to take this journey with you. We'll see you again next week.